You join me at a lake in the Cotswold called Bradley's. Now it's a day ticket venue, so it should be right up my street. However, up until 2 weeks ago, I knew absolutely nothing about this place. I didn't even know it existed. To top it all off, it's a 120 acre gravel pit, which completely takes me out of my comfort zone because it's 50 acres bigger than anything I've fished before. So I arrived early this morning. I've spent the first couple of hours having a walk around, trying to locate some fish. And luckily I've managed to narrow it down to 2 swims. I'm still a bit undecided which one to go in. So I'm gonna spend the next couple of hours really just waiting to see something to tell me where I should start. Now we've got 3 days ahead of us, so that might change over the course of this session. But basically this swim's at the far end of the lake. It operates in a no fishing zone, so it gives me plenty of options with no other angling pressure. So I'm gonna carry on watching. Hopefully we can get the gear out of the car soon because I'm really excited to catch my first Cotswolds carp. On any new water, it's important to make sure that you've got a spot which is presentable to put your rigs over. Now, there's a lot of weed in this lake and that's evident from it all being in the margin. So what I'm doing at the minute is I've just put a bare lead on my spod rod and just feeling it down. Dunk. So basically the braid's got no stretch in it, so I can feel every little tremor that's happening with the lead out there. So it doesn't have to be polished. I'm not looking for pea gravel. All I'm looking to do is find a spot that's either got no weed around it or got a little bit of weed around it, just so that I can present 3 bags over the top and I know that I'm fishing. The worst thing you want to do is casting 3 hook baits straight into the weed and you're going to be sat there all night with rigs that aren't even presentable, which is the worst case scenario. So I think I have found a spot now. It's just over 100 yard. It's not crystal clean. There's a bit of silt over the top of it, but then just as I pull back, that's when the weed starts. So it's perfect really for ambushing the fish that's coming out of the weed. So now I'm happy with that. I'm gonna wind this in, clip the fishing rods up and get the rods out there. Well, that's all 3 rods on the money for the night. I'm not gonna lie, the wind's been an absolute nightmare. It's proper beat me up. I wanted to fish solid bags out there, which I'm definitely confident in, but I just couldn't do it, couldn't get them out there. So I've changed over to standard leg clips, little tiny wafters, slide a bag of pellets down them just so it doesn't tangle in flight. Rods are on the money. Let's see what tonight brings. Just a little update. Unfortunately, there's no fish to report from last night. I did have an occurrence from a crayfish during the middle of the night. When I arrived yesterday morning, the guys in the tackle shop actually told me there was some crayfish in here. They said they weren't a massive problem. So I thought I'd go with my normal tactics as usual. But yeah, sort of around midnight, left-hand bobbins at the deck, wind in, it's discharged the lead, a few little marks in the hook bait. So rather than cast out in this wind during the middle of the night, I left that rod out, hoping that maybe I might get a chance on the other 2, but it didn't happen. So I got up early this morning, spent the first hour having a look around, didn't see any fish. So if, in all honesty, I went to bed last night not feeling 100% confident where they were, didn't quite get the drops that I wanted. So I've lined them in early doors, something I wouldn't usually do because that's normally bite time for me on any venue. So I've took a risk, wound them in, managed to get them clipped back up again, and I basically moved my spot just ever so slightly to the right, cast out, and now I'm getting a crack down every single time. From what I'm aware, there's a bit of a bar out there, and I think I was sort of edging just towards the end of it, back into the weed. So I've come up on top of it, and now I'm actually rocking sitting behind rods that I know are clear and presentable. I've given a little bit of a tweak on the rig change as well. Because of the craze, I've actually put one rod on a little plastic yellow dumbbell. It's an IB flavour. So again, at least I know that I've got one rod out there that's rocking, isn't going to get pestered by a craze. I've also had a tweak on the rig front. You know, this wind is still pumping in and getting them rigs out has really been a struggle. So I've gone to fluorocarbon rigs now as well, so I can cast single up baits out knowing full well they're not going to get tangled. And if a crayfish does pick up the bait now, I know that that rig is going to reset itself every single time. So now I'm sitting behind rods, I'm where I want to be. They've all cracked down. I've put another probably 20 to 25 spoonfuls of cell boiler crumb and hemp. Basically, I'm using tiny little particles because what I don't want to do is the crayfish to come in and it'll take them longer to clear that up than what it will do boiler crumb. There'll still be little bits and pieces about putting smell in the water. So hopefully, if they do take some of the bait, there is a little bit down there for the carp. So yeah, let's see what today brings. Hopefully this afternoon, might get a chance or two. Well, I'm sure you can see from the trees behind me, it's blowing an absolute gale still. It's 26 degrees today, feels like -2. The positive thing is I have actually seen some active fish today. Been a little bit further down to my left-hand side, seen 5 or 6 shows within the space of 5 minutes. Whether they're on a hatch or not is unsure, but it leads me to believe there are fish in this area and they won't be on their own. So that's given me a little bit of confidence. I'm now happy with the rigs, I'm now happy with the bait. The only thing from my personal point of view now is, the question you've got to ask yourself, am I in the right area? Yeah, I believe I am. So basically this swim commands a little bit shallower water. I'm fishing out to a bar which is around 6 feet. Everywhere else around the lake sort of 12 foot all over. So basically with the sun, I want to be in the shallowest water possible. And I've actually had 2 or 3 people come up to me today. I'm sure that's not just to see me. I'm sure they've come to see whether this peg's available, which leads me to believe that I should be even more confident that people are coming up to try and get in this peg. So the tweaks are made with the rigs and the bait. We're 24 hours into the session now. It might be the case I might blank this session, but I'm happy with the progression and adjustments that we've made so far. I'm happy that going into tonight, I'll be full of confidence knowing that we've made the right adjustments at the right time. The only thing I'm going to do this time is when I put a little bit more bait out, I'm going to add some tiger nuts to the equation. We've basically put some boiler crumb in the lake earlier in the margin, and even in the margin with the wind and the undertow, it was drifting all over the place and I wasn't quite happy that it was all getting down on the spot where I wanted it. So I'm going to add some few whole items into the mix. Hopefully the craze won't smash them to pieces. There'll be something down there for the carp left. But basically now it's just a case of getting all 3 rods, bang on the money, and some bait over the top. It doesn't matter whether this takes 5, 6, 7 casts, it's irrelevant. All I want to know is that them rods are in there, prime for bite time in the morning. It's going to be my first proper bite time as well. So let's see what happens. I'm going to get these 3 out now, and fingers crossed that we'll have a carp show you tomorrow morning. Well, we're into mid-morning now. I've been holding off to update you because it's been looking really good for a bite. I've been super confident of it happening this morning, but unfortunately, it's still all quiet on the western front and no fish to report. Without making too many excuses up, I'm sure the wind's having a massive effect on it for a couple of reasons, really. First reason, we've been sat here really in coats and a hat for the last couple of days. It's been 26, 27 degrees, although we've got near gusts of nearly 35 mile an hour, and it's an easterly wind. It's been absolutely Baltic. So if we're not sure what to do and we're wrapped up in clothes in that weather, maybe that's having an effect on the carp. Second thing is, obviously when I turned up, I wanted to use my #1 presentation, which would have been solid bags. Unfortunately, I just wasn't able to get them out there in this wind. It wasn't too much of an issue. I changed to a rig that I'm confident in, one that wouldn't tangle. They've gone out perfectly, so I'm still presented, still super confident, but I'm sure that wind is having a bigger effect on it than probably I'd like it to. I'm gonna sit out for a little while longer, but I think the plan of the action today is wind the rods in a little bit later on if nothing happens, and go for a walk and maybe a look on the end of the wind. And then play it by there really. It's either stick or twist. I either see nothing and stay here, or if there's fish down there, then we pack up and move on to fish. So we'll play it by ear and see what happens. As I've already mentioned, fishing in a big wind can be really tricky at the best of times, especially when it's a crosswind. So I've had to turn to a rig that gives me great anti-tangle purposes, and that's a Combi Rig. So to tie this version, all I've done is take some of the camo material in the 20 pound and stripped it from the spool. I then used a stripper tool and pulled back 6 or 7 inches of it and then cut it off, but I've left a couple of mil with the braid still actually on, so the coating's still on. I'll tell you about that a little bit later, that is important. I've then made a simple hair, and that's what's going to mount my bait onto. I've then got my hook bait, and in this case, it's a cell dumbbell and a cell topper, and all I've done is join them together on a baiting needle, trim round just so they join together nice and neatly, and then slid that onto the hair and put a bait stop in place. And then using a size 4 wide gape for my rig. So I've slid the wide gape down, and then what I've done is I want my hook sat just so the bottom of the hook touches the bottom of the bait, just so I've got that nice bit of separation. I've then wrapped down 14 times on the shank of the hook, and that almost leaves it opposite the point. I've gone back 2 or 3 times over the top of the knot just to secure it and back through the eye. I've then slid, that's a medium kicker, it's a green kicker in this case, just so it protects that knot, and it also allows the rig to turn in the fish's mouth a little bit easier. I'm then going to join the 2 materials together. So the fluorocarbon section is 20 pound IQ2, and what I do is I join them both together using an Albright knot, make a loop in the fluorocarbon, thread the braid through. I then wrap round 5 or 6 times up, then 3 or 4 times back over, and then where I told you to leave that tiny little bit of strippable braid still on the hook link initially, it's then going to make it easier for you to pass that back through, whereas it'd be a little bit fiddly if it was all exposed. Then moisten the knot, pull it all nice and tight, and I like probably 5 or 6 millimetre there gap, not too long and not too short. I still want that little bit of movement even with the stiff material. Then what I do is I'll slide an anti-tangle sleeve down onto the fluorocarbon and make a simple overhand loop in the other section of the IQ. All that's going to do is allow me to attach that to the leg clip, and all the anti-tangle sleeve is going to do is allow me to neaten everything up, and again that's going to give me that little bit more anti-tangle properties when I cast. I finish the rig off just by applying a small amount of dark matter putty around the knot just to protect that knot, and obviously that's going to allow it to make sure my hook link is sat flush on the lake bed should this fall on something that's going to make it kick up basically. So that's the finished rig. The reason I'm using it is to prevent tangles when casting, but also with the crays in this lake, if a crayfish picks me up, I'm always going to get them resetting properties as well. So it ticks all the boxes really, plus the fluorocarbon is giving me them invisibility qualities as well. So it fits the bill, and this is what I've been using on this session. Right, I said I was going to go and have a little look around. I managed to locate some fish in the main centre of the lake. I haven't seen anything up here. It's the first time I've physically seen fish. Since the last night, the fish are there. I've got to move. Right, the first thing I've done is have a little lead around. I found a lovely little spot, probably the clearest spot that I've found so far. So once I've had 3 or 4 casts, make sure it's clean, and I can present 3 reds over it nicely. Before I do anything else, set the bivvy up, cast the rods out or anything, I'm going to get a little bit of bait in, probably only 6 or 8 spoms. I'm only looking for a bite or 2 now. And then I'm going to cast my rods out in a few hours' time, just give the fish a little bit of breathing space, let them know that the bait's here, and basically let the bait get established before I start crashing leads on him late. So I'm going to keep at it, 6 or 8 spoms, and that should be enough for a bite or 2 this this evening. Fingers crossed. Right, we've had a change of swim, now it's time for a change of tactic. I'm going back onto my other faithful solid bags. I wanted to start with this tactic when I first got here, but due to the wind that was coming in my face, it'd make it nigh on impossible to get them out there. So, with a change of swim, the new spot's only 70 yards, the wind's now coming over my back, means that it's perfect for getting these bad boys out to the spot. I've rested the swim, hopefully the fish have gained confidence and maybe had a mouthful or two. The only thing left to do now is to get 3 of these out to the spot, and maybe this might be my lucky night. Well, we've come to the end of the session now, and unfortunately we've not managed to bank any fish. So I guess it's time for me to give you the list of excuses. Well, I haven't really got any. I fished effectively, I fished confidently, and I know full well that if those fish were in front of me, I probably would have caught them. The regulars who fished here for a long time have managed to pick the odd fish off from around the lake, so there was definitely fish there to be caught. Yes, the weather conditions were far from ideal. We had gale force winds a couple of days, easterlies coming straight into our face. We've got a heat wave today where it's 30 degrees nearly. So yeah, but it's not an excuse to make. I feel I fish really, really well. The one thing that this place has done, however, is it's definitely got under my skin, and I will certainly be back to even the score. Well, I'm back at Bradley's. It's been 6 weeks since my last session, and although I didn't catch anything on that trip, I really feel like I learnt a lot, which is all part and parcel of fishing in new water. Now, for me, the biggest notable change already is the weather conditions. Last time we had 30-degree heat, we had easterly winds. This time it's the complete opposite. We've got westerly winds, a little bit of drizzle in the air, and it's at least 10-degree cooler. Now, I've started a swim called The Point. I've seen fish out at long range, well out of castable distance at the minute. However, I have seen fish, and it might well be at some point during the session we end up moving. But I just feel with the changes that I've made to my approach, the change in the weather, I'm that little bit closer to catching my first Bradley's carp. So as I've already mentioned, I've made some adjustments to my approach, and the first one is with my spod mix. So I'm using particles, and I'm using the pulse mix. Basically, the pulse mix has got little items in there such as hemp, and bigger durable items such as maize. Now, with there being a lot of crayfish in this lake, and bite time being in the morning, I want to make sure there's still some bait around the hook baits for that period of the day. Now, obviously, If I need to use bigger items such as boilies throughout the session, I will do. I've got some in the van, but for now I'm going to start with this, and hopefully it'll mean that I can be confident in the morning knowing there's some bait left around my hook baits. Well, that's all 3 rods in position for the night. I did actually wait until the wind died off a little bit so we could get all 3 bang on the money. I'm as confident as ever. Now it's just time to keep fingers crossed and hope that something happens through the night. Well, I've been sat next to my rod since 4 o'clock this morning, and the only fish I've seen have been at a super long range, 200 yard plus, just well out of casting distance. So what I've done now is I've packed up. I'm heading down to my 4th swim since I've been fishing this lake. Again, I'm still learning the lake, and I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't make this move. My rigs were fine. They were presented on clear spots. I was baiting up accurately, and I just know that if the fish had been there, I'd have got a bite. So on a big pit like this, it's crucial that you're on fish. And for me, I need some fish in front of me. At the minute, since I've been fishing this, I don't really feel like I've been on a decent sized group of fish, or I feel like I would have had a bite. So it's time to make another move, see if it pays off. So I've just walked into the swim, plonked the barrow down, and straight away I've heard that distinctive sound of a fish bosh. It's just off to the left-hand side of this swim, probably 60, 70 yard out. It's the closest thing I've seen to casting distance. So straight away my confidence has gone through the roof. Yesterday the wind was hacking down to the other end of the lake on the point where I was. It's slightly changed now today, but basically the undertow would have been pushing back up this way, and I think that's had a massive effect on the fish. They certainly weren't on the end of it, so maybe they were on sort of just off the side of it. But either way, I'm just happy that I'm finally on some fish. It's been the first time I can honestly say, since I've been fishing this lake, that I'm actually on fish that are in reachable distance. So hopefully this is the move that I've been looking for. This is the last of the 3 rods to go out for the night. Let's just hope she goes out as well as the other 2. Oh, that's the one. I'm not gonna lie, I did throw a bit of a wobbler today. I feel like I've really fished effectively, and there's not really a lot that I would have done differently. I just don't feel like I've been on any decent number of fish. I feel like I've presented everything properly. Everything's always been clean. I'm just hoping, you know, I need that bit of luck now, really. Things definitely haven't gone my way. I've definitely underestimated this venue, but it has now really got under my skin. The next time I want to be able to see you is when I wake up in the morning. I hope my alarm clock's one of them Delkim screaming off, because I've gone through everything now. I've gone through a thunderstorm and got wet through. I've been burnt to death. I've got about 9 bites on my feet at the minute. It's really, really starting to take its toll on me. So there's not many times I can sit here and say I genuinely really want a carp. But this is one of them times where it would mean so much to me to get one now. So fingers crossed tonight's the night. Well, that's the end of the 2-night session, and unfortunately still no fish to report. All that's doing is building the anticipation and the excitement and the fuel in the fire inside of me to come back again. It's definitely no time to give up now. It's still a very new lake to me. It's only the second trip, and there is a lot to learn on here. It's a huge lake, but I do believe that the tweaks I made from last session, which I took into this trip, have definitely worked. The tweaks on the rig changes, I don't believe it's anything that I've done, and I do believe that if there was carp in front of me, I would have caught them this trip. We made a move of swims. I've literally done every single thing I could have done, covered all options. But one thing's for sure, now is definitely not the time to give up, and I will certainly be back to try and catch one of these Bradley's carp. Well, I was just saying to you, we're literally doing the end piece to the session, and the rods are on the floor, and all of a sudden the left-hand clutch has just gone into meltdown. It's absolutely tore off. You couldn't write it, honestly. I've never been so nervous playing a carp in all my life. I've really, for the amount of effort that we've gone through and what we've had to go through these 2 sessions, I really want this to go in the net. All right, I'm gonna concentrate now because it's getting close and there is a lot of weed. He's a right gnarly old thing. Come on, baby, please, please, after all this, get in that net. Go on, son, yes, get in there. I am absolutely shaking. Oh, thank God for that. Get in. Well, check him out. I'm sure he's got a few stories to tell. 27 4 ounce, almost definitely a 30 pound at the right time of year. Looks like he's had a healthy spawn. This fish is significant for 2 reasons. Firstly, it really has put us through hell and we've really had to work hard. You know, this lake is at least 40 acres bigger than anything I've fished before. It's really took me out of my comfort zone, and this is a reward for this session. And secondly, it just goes to prove all those little tactics and changes that I made with both the rigs and the bait are working, and all I need now is fish to be in front of me and hopefully I'll catch him. But one thing is for sure, I cannot wait for the next session. Get in there. Well, you join me back on Bradley's for my 3rd session. It's now the middle of October. The leaves are starting to fall off the trees and the weather conditions look perfect. It's overcast, got a bit of drizzle in the air as well, so I'm really confident. So the first session, I turned up, we were literally turning up blind. I felt like I was really finding my feet that trip. We didn't catch anything, but we did take a lot away from it. The second session we came back, we took the knowledge from the first trip, and we did actually manage to catch one. Now we're into the 3rd session, so taking all that information from the previous 2, hopefully put it into practice this trip. I'm confident as ever. This is a tricky venue. It's never going to be easy. However, I am very optimistic. So let's see what happens. So here's the rig I was actually hoping to talk to you about in my last session. For all intents and purposes, it's a spinner rig. Now I've had to construct something that's literally as cray proof as I can possibly get it. So the material itself is a 25 pound boom section. All that's going to do is if the crays start messing around with it, picking it up and throwing it around, it's always going to be able to reset itself. Now at one end, I've crimped a size 11 ring swivel. That's going to attach to a leg core leader as well. So again, if the crays pick it up, this swivel is going to allow it to move up and down on the leg core freely without moving the lead, hopefully. At the other end, I've got a spinner swivel, and that's attached to a size 4 wide gape X. My favourite pattern of hook, and when it's sharpened, it's absolutely razor. Once it goes in, it doesn't come out. As a hook bait, I've got a piece of fake corn there and also a piece of yellow foam underneath it. Now, the yellow foam underneath, I've just trimmed it down just so it sinks under its own weight and sits some nestles on the bottom nicely. Now, crays are renowned as well for pulling putty off. So what I didn't want to do is put them off to mould a bit of putty around one of those crimps. So I've got it literally just so it falls under its own weight. The corn on top also has the hair stop actually removed out of the plastic. So when I tighten down with some dental floss, pull it down into the corn, and that makes sure that those crays can't pull the hair stop off, and then also in turn pulling the bait off during the nighttime period. So this is a rig that got me that fish at the end of my last session. It's what I've started with at the beginning of my third session. Hopefully this will do me another bite tonight. Have a look at him. Proof's in the pudding. First 24 hours and we've had 3 bites. Lovely common, this low 20 mirror, and unfortunately we've lost one as well. So finally all the pieces of the jigsaw are coming together. Let's hope there's a few more. So the spot mix has changed slightly since the last session. I've kept the pulse mix in there, which was successful. It got us that fish right at the last minute last time. But this time, I've added 2 more elements to the mix, and that's boilies and pellets. So what I've done is I've prepared some cell boilies at home. Instead of using whole baits, which would be easy for the crays to get at, I've blitzed it up into boilie crumb and added some essential cell stick mix liquid to it, just to preserve it for the session. All that's going to do is create a lovely cloud through the water columns, and all those little food items, it's going to be impossible for the crays to pick it all up. To that, I've also added some essential cell response pellets. Now I haven't gone too mad with them. There is some bream, roach and other bits and bobs in here. Well, there isn't a carp that swims that won't eat pellet. So both those items definitely complemented the particle well last night. Got 3 bites within the first 24 hours. And what I'm having to do is, because it is so difficult to get on the fish in this venue, they could be at 300-400 yards, it's just physically impossible to get on them. I'm having to create as much smell and attraction in the water as I possibly can. And I'm basically using the bait as the feature out there. So I'm putting quite a lot out. And the last little touch I'm doing to the bait is I'm adding some of the new Cream Smart liquid to it, just to give the bait that little bit more attraction and a different element to what the fish have seen before. So it's definitely worked for the first 24 hours. I'm going to concentrate, get the rest of this bucket in, and hopefully we'll have the same success tonight. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of our session. Unfortunately, nothing else happened last night. I was super confident going into last night. Everything looked right. We've got the weather conditions. We'd had 3 bites in the previous 24 hours. Literally repeated the process, redid the rods in the afternoon, a bit more bait over the top. And yeah, I don't know what's happened. I don't think it's anything that we've done. You know, this is a huge lake. The wind swung direction during the night, and I just think the fish ventured off somewhere else. But 3 bites in the 48 hours we've been here. I'm over the moon with that. And you know, when I look back at all the sessions we've done, so the first session we turned up to this lake knowing absolutely nothing about it. We knew roughly that it was a big lake. We didn't know how big. We didn't know that the vast majority of it you can't fish because they're out of bounds. We had no idea of the crayfish. We had no idea it was full of weeds, and it was 50 acre plus bigger than anything I'd experienced before. I think I was probably a little bit overconfident, if anything, going into that first trip, but we learned from it. We then had the knowledge which we could take into the second session, and when we turned up second time, we had a bit more of an idea. We implemented some new tactics. We changed the bait. We found a rig that was virtually cray-proof, so we adapted. And in the end, we got our rewards on the second trip with that lovely 27-pound mirror. So that's when things started to drop. That's when the penny dropped and thought, we're on the way now. We're sorting the pieces of the jigsaw, and we've turned up this session. So now we know the rigs and the bait. We added those couple of extra elements into the bait. And this time we've got the best weather conditions. We're in autumn now, we're in the middle of October. The water temperatures dropped slightly and it just felt right. Although we hadn't necessarily seen any fish, the area was sort of the area we caught from last time. So again, each individual session we're learning. And yeah, 3 bites, so that makes 4 bites now in the 3 trips we've done. And I think, to be honest with you, if somebody told me that at the start, I'd have snapped their hand off for it. It has been testing. In my opinion, this is one of the toughest day to keep lakes in the country. There's no 2 ways about it. All the elements added together, really tricky conditions. And I think I'm really pleased with what's happened and how we've come across and the fish we've caught. I don't think there's a lot more we could have done to put any more fish on the bank in the time we've been given. The 3 sessions we've had have been spaced apart. We don't know anybody down here. We haven't been able to keep in touch with the lake. All 3 sessions have been like just one-off separate sessions. And I think, yeah, I'm really, really pleased. I think I just hope that when you're watching this, the next time you visit a venue for the first time, you can take something away from this and adapt it into your own fishing. And lastly from me, I think it's just going to be a miserable, wet pack down.